Hey guys, the testing concerning Ms.Stranger's power level have already been confirmed. So we're gonna talk about this in this video. If you just wanted TLDR, Ms.Stranger is completely unplayable. Now we're gonna figure out and talk about how this came to be and what are the reasons for this. So let's dive into it. Ms.Stranger's damage output is just way too low, flat out, and she is in a pretty weird limbo. She would have to be a sub DPS looking at her damage output, but you can't play her as a sub DPS. Let me explain one more time that a sub DPS is primarily here to provide everything to the main DPS. Whatever your main DPS asks for and or needs, the sub DPS provides this to the main DPS in a better and more beneficial way than any other character in the game would. That is what a sub DPS would do. Now Ms.Stranger doesn't provide anything to anyone. You have to play Ms.Stranger as the main DPS, as everything evolves around her unique mechanic of accumulating a special incantation that is called Moth to the Flame. And if you would pair Ms.Stranger together with the main DPS, you would lose the focus and the priority of playing your main DPS as actively and as much as possible by putting Ms.Stranger into the sub DPS slot. That doesn't work, right? And if using her as a main DPS, she doesn't really have a very good sub DPS that supports exactly what she wants to do. I had the theory of Chen Higuang being a very good pairing together with Ms.Stranger. That is not the case though, because first of all, that would mean you would replace Liang Yue with Ms.Stranger. You cannot do this because you would diminish your damage output by an absurd margin. Additionally, Ms.Stranger doesn't have any follow-up attack synergy whatsoever. Some of her mechanics even state explicitly that they do not count as follow-up attacks. So you cannot play her together with Flutter Page, there is no synergy, and even the effect of Chen Higuang lowering the size of incantations in your hand, which would lead to, or in theory, the theory that I thought might come true, is that this very unique ability of Chen Higuang will help us to play out the special incantation that we accumulate thanks to Ms.Stranger will be played more often than not, and this will greatly increase Ms.Stranger's damage output. That turned out to absolutely not be the case. Because of the two reasons that I mentioned, there is no follow-up attack synergy going on at all, and Ms.Stranger doesn't deal nearly, not even close, of enough damage. You cannot replace Liang Yue, because Liang Yue does deal way more damage than a Ms.Stranger would. Ms.Stranger's damage output is around of the same level of a Recoleta. We already know, Recoleta is not truly crushing it, right? So Recoleta and Ms.Stranger, they are both from the mineral afflatus though. And Ms.Stranger is kind of the single target version of what Recoleta is. Recoleta is the AoE version. So that's the most positive thing I could say about Ms.Stranger. That the only true, somewhat viable main DPS that we have in the game that deals mineral afflatus damage is Recoleta. If Recoleta is not your cup of tea, or you want someone who deals more single target damage compared to AoE damage, that is where you would default then to Ms.Stranger, if you would ever decide to pull for this garbage. You shouldn't, of course. And so, Another thing, that the core and the main reason why Ms.Stranger is 100% completely unplayable is to even make her work is you would need to play her together with Rihanna. Why? Because for every single team in the game, no matter where you look, if you look into Afterglow, Dynamo, Instrument, no matter where you would play Ms.Stranger, yeah, she doesn't work there because you simply lack the AP and that you would need in order to make Ms.Stranger work. You need to move her Moth to a Flame incantation as fast as possible, and you cannot pay the AP for it. That's why she's completely unplayable. She will always be too slow no matter what, unless you play her with Rihanna, because Rihanna makes it so that her incantations are played completely for free. So you, by playing Rihanna's incantation, you wouldn't use up any AP, and that would be the way to make Ms.Stranger's Moth to a Flame incantation be moved to the very right of your hand like fast enough. That's the only way to make Ms.Stranger playable. And now comes a different problem, because where do you play Rihanna? The main and core answer is Blood Tide. Blood Tide is Rihanna's best in slot, and there you would replace Sentinel. So now you have to look, hey, can I actually fit Ms.Stranger into Blood Tide? Because again, I want to pair Ms.Stranger together with Rihanna. I have to look now where Rihanna is played and then see if there is a spot, if I could make a spot free for Ms.Stranger. And as you can see here on your screen, the answer is no, because the only replaceable character was Sentinel to begin with, and she is now replaced by Rihanna. You cannot replace Nautica, you cannot replace Sentinel, and Robushka, right? Ms.Stranger is not a sustain, so you cannot replace Robushka. That means you can't play Ms.Stranger together with Rihanna. If you would force it, you would diminish the viability and the power level of Rihanna. Rihanna is the second best character of all time, so you don't want to do that at all. You want to use such a potent character as Rihanna to her absolute maximum amount of potential, and that is in Blood Tide. There's no other spot open, there's no way you can make that happen, and therefore you cannot play Ms.Stranger. Now you could be like, now you could be on the search. Like, it happens very, very often that whenever I or someone calls a character unplayable, then people try to desperately find a way at all costs to say no, here is how you play this character, right? And then they come up with completely ridiculous things. It happens all the time, every time. So if you would be of the mindset, okay, no, I play Rihanna in Instrument, bro, I don't even play her in Blood Tide, but Sentinel is not crushing it anymore, she's on the verge to be replaced anyways, so why not let me do this with Ms.Stranger, right? I already gave you the answer. That is because you would then diminish the effectiveness of Nautica, because now you cannot play Nautica as active anymore as you wish to, because you have to move this Moth to a Flame special incantation to the right. It reduces the freedom of your rotations, which you cannot do in Blood Tide, and therefore not in any other team, right? You cannot do this. And again, don't forget that Ms.Stranger is unplayable without Rihanna, so there is no way. Or maybe play her in Instrument, right? Just for the time being to fill the slot there with something that would not be Rihanna. No, that is impossible, because the instrument archetype accumulates incantations that we call energy. And these energy incantations, they have to be played. You have no way around that. Otherwise, the instrument archetype doesn't work. Nothing will ever happen if you don't use the energy incantation that they accumulate. And these energy incantations, they will be accumulated to the left of Moth to a Flame. But you have to play the incantations to the right of Moth of a Flame, or to a Flame, in order to move it to the right hand side. That means you cannot play the energy. That means the instrument archetype doesn't work, you know? You get the point. And again, Ms.Stranger is unplayable without Rihanna, because you don't have the AP to make that work. So that is the tragedy of a character that is Ms.Stranger. It is pretty much, it is pretty much how I exactly predicted it. I gave her too much credit again. I was too nice to her. There was a chance with her portrays and maybe with Chen Higu-ang and you know, that kind of stuff, but no. There is no hope for this character. And I predicted this, right? All the signs pointed towards Ms.Stranger being complete trash. I already told you that this will very likely, most likely be a scenario that we had with Muldir in the 2nd anniversary. And yeah, it is pretty much exactly the same scenario. Another completely unplayable character. There is no use you can get out of Ms.Stranger. Unfortunately, we thought, hey, we tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, right? With saying things like, oh, this is good for new players because we have a slottable DPS character now, and yeah, we can play her together with any character that we want and it will be fine. No, it's not, right? Because again, she has to be played with Rihanna to even work. That is not a slottable character then anymore. So yeah, that is unfortunately the situation with Ms.Stranger. Must skip, completely irrelevant, big garbage. I hope that video was fun and informative. If you like Reverse1999 content in general, please consider leaving a follow on my channel. I would really appreciate it. But until next time, take care of yourselves, have a great day, and we love this game.